The Sunday school lessons for November the 16th, 2025 are Ezekiel's sign and the medium is the message. Ezekiel chapter 3, verses 10 through 11, and chapter 24, verses 15 through 24, and verse 27. This is an audio reading of the lesson with intermittent commentary. Verses 10 through 11. Verse 10. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully and take to heart all the words I speak to you. This verse offers us just a small part of Ezekiel's commissioning to be a prophet of God. That lengthy commissioning is described in all of chapters 2 and 3. The idea is that the man Ezekiel must be prepared for his new role. If we are familiar with the phrase Son of Man as a self designation of Jesus, we may be surprised to see it used here to refer to Ezekiel. In fact, of the nearly 200 occurrences of this phrase in the Bible, close to half are found in the book of Ezekiel. Its use here may be to stress Ezekiel's mortality. It is in that light that the prophet is to measure himself against God. In Ezekiel chapter 2, verses 8 through chapter 3, verse 3, the prophet in training was commanded to eat a message contained on a scroll and to fill his belly and stomach with its words. When we place what command alongside the instruction here for Ezekiel to take to heart what he hears that God has to say, the picture is one of complete and total acceptance of the Lord's message. Verse 11. Go now to your people in exile and speak to them. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or fail to listen. To this point in the book, the Lord has spoken of the audience Ezekiel will be addressing as obstinate, stubborn, and hardened. As such, they are briars, thorns, and scorpions. Ezekiel won't have to travel far to address them because he lives right among them in exile. In sharing in the fate of the people, it will be natural for Ezekiel to speak with compassion. But Ezekiel's compassion must not be allowed to soften the Lord's message. Whether they listen or fail to listen is irrelevant in that regard. The prophet's duty is to remain faithful to the Lord's message. His listeners must decide for themselves whether they will do the same. Verses 15 through 17. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, with one blow I am about to take away from you the delight of your eyes. Yet do not lament or weep or shed any tears. Groan quietly. Do not mourn for the dead. Keep your turban fastened and your sandals on your feet. Do not cover your mustache and beard or eat the customary food or mourning. The prophet has obeyed God without fail in communicating the word of the Lord to the people. Much of this communication has involved him using himself in and as illustrations of God's wrath to come against the covenant people. Another illustration is coming: the loss of the delight of the prophet's eyes, the death of Ezekiel's wife. What this death is designed to illustrate is revealed in Ezekiel chapter 24, verse 21. In a series of 9 commands, God directs that Ezekiel's outward, visible, and audible reaction to his loss is to be strictly counterculture. Mourning the death of another can involve lengthy and demonstrative behavior in various cultures, both ancient and modern. The funeral and accompanying days of mourning would involve all friends and family who could attend. Musicians might be hired to sing laments or play instruments. The volume of sound would be quite high. The phrases, keep your sandals on your feet, do not cover your mustache and beard, indicate a shared expectation regarding proper mourning attire. Similarly, the phrase, eat the customary food of mourners, points to food that is eaten at funeral meals. There is a certain overlap in the meanings of these nine prohibitions, and it's tempting to examine each of the nine in minute detail. It's more valuable, however, to focus on the bigger picture. The larger task of prophetic communication must take precedence over all else. Verses 18 through 20. Verse 18. So I spoke to the people in the morning, and in the evening my wife died. The next morning I did as I had been commanded. Ezekiel obeys God, period. Even so, we can't help but notice that the text is striking for what it does not say and the obvious questions it does not answer. The timeline of in the morning and in the evening and the next morning indicates a period of many hours between Ezekiel's receiving God's instructions, the death of the prophet's wife, and the man's divinely commanded visible non reaction to it. What did Ezekiel do during the hours between those three events? Did he tell his wife about her pending death? Did he pray to God that death would not happen? Had his wife been at the point of death anyway, due to illness? The text simply does not say. Verse 19. Then the people asked me, won't you tell us what these things have to do with us? Why are you acting like this? The people notice Ezekiel's odd behavior. He exhibits none of the typical actions, emotions, or postures of grief. Interested curiosity is a good first step toward understanding something. But as we move from curiosity to investigation to understanding, we must be aware of what we use as a filter in reaching conclusions. Another way to say this is that we must acknowledge our presuppositions. Then we must be prepared to change them as the evidence requires. This challenge repeats itself throughout the book of Ezekiel as God labors to change the mindset of his people. That mindset is one of rebellion against God, a fact stressed about a dozen times in this book. God's repeated technique is to catch people's attention through certain actions or inactions of his prophet. If the explanation for those behaviors doesn't match what the people expect to hear, that is, it doesn't line up with their presuppositions, then the explanation is rejected or twisted in some way. Verse 20. So I said to them, the word of the Lord came to me. The author's frequent use of the words I and me leaves no doubt that Ezekiel himself was writing of his personal experiences regarding his interactions with God. As the prophet passes along divine communication, he is fulfilling his role as a watchman. The phrase, the word of the Lord, makes clear that what the prophet is about to say does not originate with himself. The numerous uses of this introductory formula in the Bible usually don't specify exactly how the communication occurred. Those cases where that how is specified include communication by dreams or visions, through an angel, and from a burning bush. But the method is not important here. What's important is that the prophecy proves to be true. Verse 21. Say to the people of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am about to desecrate my sanctuary, the stronghold in which you take pride, the delight of your eyes, the object of your affection. The sons and daughters you left behind will fall by the sword. People are more open to learning something new if they themselves open the discussion. That seems to be the technique here, as Ezekiel has waited for the people to ask why before he gives the answer that begins in this verse. The response, the people of Israel, invites a review of the terminology used to identify God's covenant people of the Old Testament era. Shortly after the death of King Solomon in 930 BC, the United Kingdom of Israel's 12 tribes divided into two kingdoms. After that happened, the word Israel often became associated with only the 10 northernmost tribes. Even so, that distinction had also been used before the monarchy divided. Concurrently, the designation Judah often was shorthand for the two southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin was much smaller than that of Judah. But that distinction in sense and reference was not always airtight after the monarchy divided. In the text before us, for example, the word Israel does not seem to include the 10 northern tribes, since the audience is those of Judah and Benjamin, who were in Babylonian exile. The 10 northernmost tribes had been taken into Assyrian exile over 130 years prior. That conclusion harmonizes with the way the writer refers to Israelites in Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 3. We also should investigate differing ways the covenant people are identified as we consider the first part of the phrase, the people of Israel. The Hebrew translated people describes the people group as a single family, but the Old Testament describes the Israelites in several other ways as well, as sons of Israel, people of Israel, and so forth, in referring to the residents of Judah. Ezekiel prefers to use some form of the word Israel rather than Judah by a ratio of nearly 11 to 1. This is the answer to the why question of Ezekiel chapter 24:19. The prophet's audience is expected to see that his reaction, or more precisely, his lack of reaction, to the death of his wife as an analogy. Number one, loss of Ezekiel's wife equal loss of temple, the delight of your eyes. Two, Ezekiel equal the people. Three, Ezekiel's reaction to equal people's reaction to the destruction and death. As the Assyrians were God's tool to exile Israel's 10 northern tribes in 722 BC, so also the Babylonians would be to the southern kingdom of Judah in 586 BC. The temple is not some kind of good luck charm that protects evil people. Although Ezekiel's audience in Babylon would not personally experience the destruction to be brought by Nebuchadnezzar, they would share in the horror of that event nonetheless. They would experience the dismay expressed in texts such as Psalm 79 and 137 or Lamentations chapter 2. This would be the punishment for their sin of idolatry. Verses 22 through 23. And you will do as I have done. You will not cover your mustache and beard or eat the customary food of mourners. You will keep your turbans on your heads and your sandals on your feet. You will not mourn or weep, but will waste away because of your sins and groan among yourselves. The prophet now drives home the analogy. No one can miss the this will be like that connections between his reactions and lack of reactions to his wife's death and those that will characterize the people when they hear of Jerusalem's fall. As Ezekiel speaks, it is January 15th, 588 BC. Jerusalem would fall on July 586 BC. Thus, Jerusalem has only a bit longer than 2.5 years before it will be destroyed. We may wonder how a city could survive a siege that lasts more than 30 months. The answer is found in Jeremiah chapter 37, verse 11. The siege was lifted temporarily while the Babylonian army dealt with a threat regarding Pharaoh's army. Ezekiel will be a sign to you. You will do just as he has done. When this happens, you will know that I am the sovereign Lord. We dare not miss the point here. False prophets and their false prophecies are rampant in this era. Their messages contradict those of the true prophets of God. So, how are the people to know who is a true prophet and who is a false prophet? The obvious answer is to wait and see whose prophecies come true. It is in that sense that the prophet Ezekiel will be a sign. Verse 27. At that time your mouth will be opened. You will speak with him and will no longer be silent. So you will be a sign to them, and they will know that I am the Lord. This verse signals a shift away from God's address to the people through Ezekiel and toward the prophet himself. The time frame signified by at that time is the time of Jerusalem's predicted fall. A feature of Ezekiel's being a sign is that he was to react to his grief by not reacting to it per Ezekiel chapter 24, verses 16b through 17. That reaction was to include silence. This verse reverses that, as the prophet's mouth is to be opened and he is allowed to speak and no longer be silent. The phrase with him refers to a man in Ezekiel chapter 33, verses 21 through 22. That passage also lifts the prophet's silence. Thank you so much for listening.